Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's Edge webinar. We're very lucky to be joined by the team from Stevens Institute of Technology, one of our Edge members that we really love working with, and repeating one of the most popular and sessions that had some of the most dialogue at our EdgeCon Winter Conference, which is a great chance to kind of spread this message and highlight this project more widely. What we're looking at today is transforming communication, the Zoom phone project at Stevens Institute of Technology. Before we get into the meat of today's content, I want to share a bit of an intro of Edge for those who may not know us as well on the call, because we've had many institutions joining us from outside of where we started in the state of New Jersey. So we were formed by the New Jersey President's Council for Higher Education as a nonprofit, member-based research and education network and a consortium to serve those higher ed institutions. Back around the turn of the century when we were formed, what that initially meant was building a network around the state of New Jersey. We still own and operate that network, and schools from Pennsylvania and New York have joined as well. But the mission and the service area have really expanded beyond the state, beyond just higher education. We work with K-12 school districts, we work with government entities, we work with healthcare institutions, really anyone with a public serving mission. Edge now exists to serve them in excelling through the use of technology. And we now have members in 19 states, and that number is constantly growing as well. So it's a big tent, and we really look for ways that we can support the missions of our institutions and the growing member base that we have. Now, how do we do that? We do that by providing best-in-class support and resources for our community. We have real deep expertise in education and the public sector. We have a team that has really driven success and driven exceptional results in work that they've done at home institutions before joining Edge, and in work that we've done hands-on collaboratively with our member and partner institutions. Everything that we do is customized to the specific needs and goals of our member institutions. Everybody's different. We represent, even just in our home state of New Jersey, we work with everyone from Rutgers and Princeton and Stevens Institute of Technology down to the smallest community colleges who may not have the same sorts of resources. But we customize that approach to maximize the outcomes that every institution can experience in the use of technology and in aligning that technology with the strategy and achieving the mission and goals of your institution. We do that through offering technologies and services like EdgeNet, which is our purpose-built optical fiber network that I referenced. Edge Discovery is a technology-based research and discovery framework that's available to everyone in our community to come together and collaborate to do things like high-performance computing, collaborative research across the board. Edge Market is our procurement arm. We issue RFPs on behalf of not only the member community of higher ed in New Jersey, but institutions nationwide. And so we really drive streamlined procurement in that way for our members. Events, networking, and community building like what we're doing here today, as well as thought leadership and solution development in a number of areas where there are real challenges for institutions to meet the needs of their communities in cybersecurity, privacy, and compliance, in trying to increase the scope and scale of digital and online teaching and learning efforts. So Edge has supporting resources that can come in and collaborate with your team and sort of expand the scope and scale of what you're able to achieve in these areas. And so we really focus on trying to generate that value, generate those outcomes for our members across the board. Today, the Stevens team is going to be focusing on their transformation with Zoom, and Edge has a Zoom partnership, and I'd like to invite really quickly Michelle Ferraro, our AVP for Business Development and Member Services, to share just a bit about that partnership before we kick it to Stevens to really get into the meat of today's presentation. Michelle?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So I'm Michelle Ferraro. I'm in charge of membership engagement and also business development. And I just wanted to take a minute to kind of just talk to you about why you should choose Edge for your Zoom needs. So as Adam mentioned, we make the procurement process a lot simpler. So a big benefit to membership is that we go out to RFP for partners. We look for partners on your behalf, which reduces procurement burden. And it also saves a lot of time and effort. And on top of that, we also negotiate a lot of discounts. So by coming through us or through Edge and using our contracts, you'll have some cost savings there. And then very important as well, we do have a lot of dedicated technical support and experts. So we help in implementing and also managing Zoom phone systems. We help with the setup, the training, the support. We go direct for Zoom for their technical support, but we also have it in-house. So if you're interested in learning more about procurement through Edge, how we have Zoom as a partner, I'll be sending out an email with my contact information and the recording here after this webinar. So you please contact me anytime with any questions you might have. So with that, Adam, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And just to emphasize really quickly, this we're the Stevens team is focusing in on Zoom today, so we wanted to highlight that. But if you're having, if you have any questions, need any support around any vendor relationships, really, that's another big part of what Edge is here to help work with and to help coordinate with the vendor side of the industry as well on your behalf. So we're always happy to do that. So without further ado, at this point, I will stop sharing my screen and get out of the way and invite the team at Stevens to share theirs and introduce themselves, and we'll get into the meat of today's content. So Team Stevens, the floor is yours.
All right, great. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you, everyone. My name is Hamad. We'll go through a quick introduction. So I'm Hamad Ali. I'm Senior Director of Infrastructure Services at Stevens. Been with Stevens for 5 years, and I oversee the network engineering, system engineering, and research computing. So with that, I'll pass it on to Miriam to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope we provide a lot of information in the next 30 minutes or so. I'm Miriam Mirza. I'm the Senior Director of IT at Stevens. I oversee the communication, project management, as well as strategic initiatives area for the IT department at Stevens. For this project specifically, I was the project manager. So that's why I'm here with the team. And I'll pass it on to Louis.
Thank you, Miriam. Hello, everyone. Louis Quispe. I'm the Associate Director of Networking and Telecommunications here at Stevens. As for Zoom, we manage the phone system and anything related to that, along with obviously the networking part of it.
All right. Thanks, Louis. So for this project, meeting, as Adam said, we will take the questions at the end of this content and all the at the end of the slides. We'll try to cover pretty much all the areas and try to answer as many questions as we can. Certain slides we'll zoom through, no pun intended, but others, there are a few focus areas where we'll spend more time. So I'm not going to read through the agenda, but we'll go through why we selected Zoom, the project plan, execution, and what we see, the risks and what we see in the future as well. So where we were before we decided Zoom. So we had an old Cisco hardware that was end of life. It was really painful to manage. We didn't have the resources that needed to maintain the system, so we had to rely on the third party. And then the COVID came, and that changed quite a lot. And we had to move to cloud solutions because the Cisco solution didn't have the robust remote capability. So what we ended up with was multiple systems, phone system. It was Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Slack, Ring Central, and there were a few others. So we're doing a lot of collaboration, needless to say. and then it didn't meet our compliance requirements either. And then the DR options were limited as well. Next slide, Mariam. So at the onset, our objectives were that it has to be cloud. So we don't have to worry about the remote solution. It needs to be available at all time from anywhere. So it has to be fully cloud at as little dependency on the on-prem infrastructure. It integrates with our core IT technologies, has to be set a target for the soft phones that we want to do away with most of the physical phones. And have a good level of adoption on-prem. Has good emergency phone system services because we do have a campus PD, and has a good capabilities for contact center. Though our contact center needs are not that large. So all of this discussion came down to two options. One was Microsoft Teams, and the other one was Zoom. Everywhere in IT, we use heavily Teams. We're fully in cloud. So Teams was big. Admin offices, Teams was also big, but they also use Zoom. But we found that the faculty love to use Zoom. So if we were to look outside and look at all the adoption, we saw Zoom being adopted the most. I mean, in IT, we use it. Admin, because faculty was using it, were also using Zoom as well. So and everybody had that installed on their phones, on their computers. So that was an easy choice. Plus, the Zoom was a simpler solution to use as well, and it gave us a complete solution. In Teams, there were a few things that were missing, like contact center, and this is I'm going back a year and a half or 2 years ago when we were looking at the solution. So contact center, they use a third party and it integrates well, but still it's a third party solution. And then the emergency phone system solution wasn't robust enough either at that time. I don't know if things have changed now, but at that time it wasn't robust. Zoom provided us with a complete solution. So it was simple to manage, great documentation, and it had all the capabilities that we need. So the next step from there on was to select the partner. We didn't want to do it ourselves, and for many reasons. Plus, we didn't have enough resources either. So we wanted a partner, and that was the key, because for us, this project was more of a change management project than technology project. So we needed a partner that had multiple deployments under their belt, and they understand our Cisco system as well, so they can see both sides. And we looked at multiple places, talked to multiple vendors. And the one that we found was Zoom, and it was after having multiple conversations with them. They had 800 deployments under their belt, so you can't go wrong with that. Yeah, there are certain things that you have to do, and there's certain burdens that came to the team, but it wasn't anything that we couldn't handle. But so Zoom as a partner made the most sense for us. Next slide. So for the project plan and project timeline, I'll pass it on to Mariam.
Thank you, Hamad. So like Hamad said, we actually saw this more as a change management project than a technical project, because a lot of the technical side was behind the scenes and the users really were not impacted by it. What they were impacted by, if you think about user experience, is I have this physical phone on my desk and I want to keep it. That was kind of like a challenge, because as you saw earlier, we had a specific target that we set for our soft phones. And then eventually also tied into Stephen's sustainability goals through our strategic plan, because we wanted to contribute to those goals as part of this project. So the timeline you see on the screen is really it was an aggressive timeline. And the initial investigation that Hamad was talking about for the partners, implementation partners, was done before phase one. So as well as our pilot was done before phase one. So our pilot was kind of phase 0. That's when IT started working on it, and we started finding bugs or issues and started training our teams. And then by the end of December, we finished phase 1. In phase 2, we migrated all of our departments, and the migration kind of started in phase 1 as well. We had some overlapping migrations. And then from there, we wanted to make sure we separate out some of our high risk, and you'll see in the additional future slides what we mean by that, some high risk areas that we wanted to give special attention to. And then by May 31st, we actually had the everything migrated, facilities fonts, which were POTS lines, migrated as well, and decommissioning of our Cisco system. We did take some more time to decommission the Cisco system, but by May 31st, it was no longer being actively used. And we closed out the project in June. So it was a very aggressive timeline. It was about an 18-month project if you put in the planning phase as well. I will say this project, if you're looking to do a project like this, pay special attention and build more time for the planning than the execution. If you plan it well, the execution will go really well. So we did spend a lot of time in our planning phases. Okay, the project team. I know these look like big numbers. Our IT team is actually fairly lean, and our network engineering team is also very lean. So we relied heavily on additional team members within IT. And for any project, I think that would make sense. So we had champions, and we call them champions because we wanted to give them additional kind of like intrinsic authority to make decisions on behalf of their department. So our champions were coming from the divisions and departments and schools that we were directly working with and impacting. One of the other things to note here is that the champions were actually selected at the highest level. So our CIO at that time, he worked directly with his cabinet member peers to get and create a list of champions for each of the departments. So that kind of made sure that the person was fully invested into the project. That was one part of it. The other was also setting up expectations with all of these champions that this is a new digital transformation for the institution. There will be a lot of changes, and there will possibly be problems, and we will work through those problems. So setting those expectations was extremely important, and I think that was one of the reasons that made this project a success. The members, we had 13 members from IT, internal IT, all of our network engineering team, which Louis leads, along with Hamad. And then we had from the project management side, we had change management through our communication and training team. We had our academic multimedia team because Zoom was going to be impacting the conference fonts as well. We had our client support team because they were the ones who were going to get questions from the end users. So the total team was 44 members. That doesn't mean we all met at the same time all the time. We had separate meetings, and you'll hear a little bit about that later on as well. In addition to this, we had what we called a core team. And I think that was something different we did with this project, and it was very effective. And in the core team, we really had only few members from the network engineering team, Hamad, myself, and the communication and training person. So it was a very small team of 5 people. And we made a lot of very quick decisions. Because we were a small team, we were able to be very agile when needed. So like I said, we treated this as more of a change management project, and communication was key. We were essentially changing something that faculty and staff were using on a daily basis. So they have a desk phone, they use it on a daily basis. Now they will not have that phone. So what they were doing was completely changed. Or was going to completely change. So we made sure we had a lot of communication. We had internal communications within the team. So we had weekly meetings for the core team. We had weekly meetings for the project team. And then we actually had a Microsoft Teams channel for a Zoom project. We created a Microsoft Teams channel to do the communication internally with the team, so we can all keep up with anything that was happening in real time. We didn't wait for the next meeting to tell the team what was going on. With the Zoom champions, we had an initial meeting. Then we actually did have multiple meetings with them, kind of explaining to them what was going to change, what will happen, when do they expect to see things. And we drafted communication emails for the champions so they can actually send those emails out to their divisions. And I think that was also something that helped really get the word out there, because the email was coming from the champions on behalf of the project team. Instead of us sending the emails out, it was going to the users from a known entity. The other thing we did with Zoom Champions was, once we had the data from our current system, we had data verification meetings that were very helpful as well. That actually helped us make sure that if there were new hires that we didn't have the data for, or something was missed, or there was someone who left and their line or their number was assigned to somebody else, we caught that early on. We didn't have to wait until we migrated over and then found it out. So there was a lot of benefits for those Zoom champion meetings. The other thing, we actually left it open to the champions to request ad hoc meetings. If they wanted to talk to the project team, we would make sure that we were available to answer their questions. Then we had the implementation partner, like Hamad mentioned. Zoom was our implementation partner. We had weekly project status meetings with them. We had another stream of meetings for the Zoom contact center on a weekly basis. And then every day of migration, we had them on the line for at least 3 hours to make sure any problems we have, we can actually work with them directly to get them resolved. So we worked extremely closely with our implementation partners, and that was another reason for the success of the project. The other thing, we had a very elaborate project website. In addition to the regular information on the website, we actually put all the communications that went out about this project on the website. So anyone that wanted to go back in time and look what was communicated was able to do that. We put in any known issues that we had with the system on the project website, publicly available, and what were we doing about it and when to expect a resolution. In addition to that, we made sure that the project champions got emails from us when we were doing the migration, a week before the migration, 2 days before the migration, and then the day after the migration. So they knew all the time what was going on. And the day of the migration, our sponsors, so the cabinet level VPs for that department or division, also got an email letting them know that your division is going to be moved, migrated over today. So if something was happening, they were aware of it as well. So a very strong emphasis on communication for this project. Training and support, again, that's part of change management. we wanted to make sure we gave users multiple forms of training. So we had recorded trainings that could be viewed on demand. We had knowledge base articles that they can go and read on their own. On the website, we had FAQs that we kept updating throughout the project as we found out more information that they can review on their own. Within our ticketing system, they could ask a question, and we had what we called canned responses from the project team explaining the answers to their questions. And if that didn't happen, we didn't have a canned pre-created response for them. The tickets would come to the project team. We actually placed QR codes on our physical phones, the select number of physical phones that were deployed. And those QR codes actually took the users directly to the knowledge base articles where they could get to the additional information if they needed. We actually also did live training for every migration. So we had the training the day of the migration, and we made that decision on purpose. The reason being, if the users didn't have that Zoom phone icon on their Zoom app, they wouldn't necessarily benefit from the training. So once they were migrated, the day of the migration, we did the training. We actually had coordinated with the Zoom training team, and their training specialist did the training for us. The next day, the IT team was actually available for at least an hour for the department to drop in and ask any questions about Zoom. And then we also created a 24-hour dedicated Teams channel for the group that was migrated, so they can actually ask their questions for 24 hours after all the trainings were completed as well. And that directly came to the project team. So that was all end user training. In terms of technical team, we actually had the training for not just our admin, so Louis and his team, but we also had training for our client support services team. So the team in certain institution, it's called help desk. So the help desk got their specific training as well. And we ran that training at least 4 times to make sure everyone knew what was going on and everyone was trained on the system and how to take certain quick actions if something wasn't working, especially for troubleshooting. So all of that went into training and support. Okay, for execution, I will pass it on to Louis.
Thank you, Miriam. Okay, so some of the from a technical perspective, there's some things to consider, right? International calling. It's currently in our system, international calling is not on for everyone by default. So what we did, we worked out, there's different ways to do this, to assign. So the way we worked it out with Zoom was we do it by group, and then we trained like Miriam mentioned, there's an admin on the client services side that can, well, first of all, we do have a form, a request form that comes in, turns into a ticket, and then it will have to go through approvals. Once it makes it through client services, someone there will then add the user to a particular group that automatically enables the feature for them. So it's been working okay. We did run into some. So that part is clean. What's not so clean was it's not just one group of, you will think that international calling in general, every country, not every country is involved. There are some separations as to what countries are allowed by default. And then as the administrators, we have to accept agreements with Zoom to take the risks that there is, right? So there are some countries that are considered high risk. Those are not on the part of the base model group, if you will, or the base group of international calling. So you have to keep adding and you do that. And I think, not, I don't think, we made yet a second group for high risk countries that only certain people have access to those countries. That hope that didn't confuse you guys, but look into international calling, who really needs it, and then think of a process to make this easier for your client services group. Some of the other considerations is what desktop phones and you're gonna go with. For us, we went with Polycom. One of the things that you really need to make sure, and I'm sure you've seen this, that you have to follow the accepted hardware by Zoom. Zoom will tell you what phones, what hardware is compatible, and they will take things out of there. So, for example, we have some conference rooms that we're using. Maybe you are familiar with conference room equipment called Bioms. So it turns out that Bioms on Zoom are not compatible anymore. So luckily for us, we only had a couple of them, and we have been turning some of our big conference rooms to Zoom rooms. So the Biom situation is out of the question there. There's also location services. This is here to make sure that it is understood with your police department as to what type of information Zoom will provide at the time that 911 call is made. Understanding what it means to call from a cell phone versus a laptop versus a desktop phone. So I think I'll go into detail in the next slide. But yeah, do take that in consideration. Next slide, Mary, please. Here we go. So as Miriam mentioned at the beginning, right? Proper planning will save you so much time at the time of execution. One of the things that we did, Hamad was really strict about this, is that we have multiple passes, right, for verification. So we had an old Cisco system. We did our own audit of it, of what, lines, user lines, what main lines, what common area phones, what faxes, what all of these things were configured in the system. And then we made our own assessment as to what was active, what should be migrated, what shouldn't. Then the Zoom team, professional services, helped us out by also doing their pass to correlate to what we found to clean it up, right? And then once we had something to actually share to the champions, then we were able to then say to the particular champions, this is what the information that we have in terms of user phones, whether they have a desktop phone, this is your main number, this is your common area phone number, this is your fax number. Let us know which of these you really want to migrate or not. So that was really key, because as Mary mentioned and Haman mentioned, right, we wanted to minimize, and we did, we minimized the number of desktop phones. We were able to convince them to pretty much put it on them to tell us, all right, this many users do not need desktop phones. That's great, because that means that many less that I have to deliver and install on users' desk. So that is key. Your inventory, your audits, that has to happen, obviously, but with a lot of attention and a lot of effort, so your execution is a breeze. The other technical detail is, at the time of decision, whether we obviously decided to bring all of our numbers and all of our phone calling plans over to Zoom versus other models, because you can maintain some things on-prem, but because we wanted to be fully cloud-based, we didn't want to keep, we migrated our numbers from Verizon. We didn't want to SIP trunk on-prem. We wanted to go strictly cloud. So we went away with the bring your own carrier. We don't want to do that. We didn't want to do SIP trunks. Any of those, Zoom will give you what's called a Zoom gateway in case you have SIP trunks as backup. So for us, backup, because this is cloud-based, we spend a lot of our efforts from a networking perspective to have, multiple internet circuits, right, in different physical locations. So that is our backup, right? We went an extra step with the police department for extra backup, but we figured we already put in the infrastructure to maintain internet connectivity as much as possible. So that is our backup for Zoom. I think that's it. What is the next slide? Oh, yes. So for emergency phones, luckily we have a good relationship with the police department, right? So we had to make sure that they were involved from the beginning. We have multiple meetings with them, so we document the process, discuss what the backup scenario, the scenario is in case of an outage, right? So while I said before that we have built, a very resilient, redundant internet access infrastructure, we always have to take in consideration what if all of my circuits go away. There is a third option, and with the police department, in case that they do have an iPad, that it will be connected to its own data service through cellular, and they will be able to take on calls from there. Yeah, that is the third backup for police, for the PD to maintain connectivity. We tested when it came to 911. We tested with the county through the police department. I remember we sat down and they wanted to test. They were really, really interested in the whole barging in, because we are not a PSAP. So when you make a phone call, a 911 call, the call by law goes to a PSAP, right? That is not on, it's not on campus. But the police department wants to be aware of this. So Zoom gives you this opportunity where as the call is made on the Zoom system from on campus, and remote if you were, but a phone rings at the police department then gets the alert, and then they get to listen in, and they get to choose when they can barge in. And once they barge in, we test it up, thoroughly with them. The county was okay with the process. The police department was okay with the process. They were happy with the level of information for location service, that was provided. That was an agreement that we had. That was part of the documented process to make sure that they were good and there are no surprises, and they did sign off of it. I know you guys will have some questions regarding that, and I'm open to answer them. I think that's in the training that we had to go with the police department. We trained the entire PD. Everybody knows what to do, where the phones go, and so on. Is this me or is this you?
And that's me, Louis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so execution of the project, we actually divided it into multiple phases. As I talked about earlier, we had a pilot phase, which was really just IT, and we wanted to make sure we catch anything and we kind of learn the process before we started doing the actual phone lines. We divided the next phase was phone lines. That was further divided into different ports. So we had 6 extra ports that we actually did with the phone lines. And the reason we went with that was really dependent on the availability and the timelines for the different departments. So think about enrollment management or admissions, whatever you call them. They have a specific timeline where they are reviewing applications, making decisions, and then reaching out to our students, right? We didn't want to disrupt their timelines, and at certain time frames, they were getting a lot of phone calls from students. So it was very important for them to keep the business running. And think of your schools, when the classes are going on, they want to make sure their staff and their faculty members have phones available to reach out to students to reach out to them. So for schools, we actually did it between semesters. So between the fall and the spring semester, that's when we did all of our schools. We separated out the conference rooms because we wanted to make sure we focus on the phone lines and the end user experience first. With conference rooms, we also had to have our academic multimedia team, which manages our conference rooms, involved in the project, and they were part of the 14 team project team because they need to evaluate which rooms had older technology and equipment that needed to be changed, which rooms were already scheduled to be in Zoom rooms, so we didn't want to touch those, and which needed upgraded versions of the equipment. So that evaluation needed to happen, so we kept that separate. For Zoom Contact Center, we had a separate stream where we met with the Zoom professional services along with our contact center members. So we had members from student accounts, we had members from financial aid, we had members from admissions. So we had different actually, and of course, client support services for IT, we had separate streams for that. So that was a separate phase. We talked a little bit about Campus PD, and we wanted to make sure we provided a white glove service to the high-risk areas. And the two high-risk areas that we identified were the Zoom Contact Center, because we needed to have separate workflows and different queues and different timeframes and different messages for each of those. So we separated those out and provided them the white glove service and higher support for those two areas, so contact center and Campus PD. And we actually, as part of this project, also went to eFax. So we got rid of all of our fax lines on campus except for two. I believe one is in Campus PD because that's a requirement. By law, they needed to have that. And then there was one additional fax line, I believe it was with facilities, but we got rid of all of our physical fax machines as well as lines. So we went to eFax as part of this project as well. So talking about project success, and we are going to be ending really soon because we want to give you time to ask your questions. This is the criteria we actually started off with to be able to migrate all fonts lines successfully, to do contact center successfully, migrate all PD lines. We set the bar at 80% user satisfaction. Positive feedback from champions because they were the ones who were interacting with the project team directly, and no complaints to the VPs and CIO and president. Interestingly enough, we actually did all what we needed to do, but the user satisfaction was much higher than 80%. We had a lot of positive feedback in surveys from our champions once they were migrated over, and there were 0 complaints to the president or the VP and CIO about this project. So definitely something we consider as a success. By numbers, if you want to know how much we did and where we landed, I'm not going to read every single thing, but the ones that are highlighted that are really important, we actually decreased the number of desk fonts by 83.25%. So think of all the desk fonts that we had. We had about 1,200 desk fonts, and we only deployed 201. That actually saved the project team a lot of time, saved us budget, and in the future, you're not having to deal with replacing those physical devices. And it also makes the institution more agile and flexible. God forbid, if there is an event like the pandemic, the staff and faculty are ready to work from anywhere because they have the Zoom phone on their desktop apps or mobile apps. Physical phone lines, we actually decommissioned 55.9%. Actually, that's incorrect, but I will correct that. We did decommission. We only have 2 fax lines now. We started with 66 fax lines, and then the POTS lines, we actually decommissioned 99.94% of our POTS lines. That was also, there was also another project going on where the fire alarms and the elevators, they actually were moving to cellular service. So that was also part of this, this number. And then in terms of budget, we actually finished the project under budget by 47.51%. So it was a win-win. We did it on time, under budget, and very happy customers. Some of the lessons learned, we did all of these things. We just thought that we could have done them better. So we created a responsibility matrix for the teams, who's responsible for doing what. But I think we could have done a better handoff between the IT teams and between what's the responsibility of our network engineering team and what's the responsibility of our client support services team. So I think that handoff we could have done a little bit better. A system audit, we actually did conduct a system audit early on, and we did it in 3 different phases, like Lois mentioned before. And I think initially we weren't paying too much attention to it, but towards the middle of the project, we kind of stopped and said, no, we have to make sure this is done right. So that's something that we learned and wanted to share with you during planning phase. Pay special attention to the audit. Coding timeframes, this is something that is more of be aware of this, because you're dependent on the timeline of, we were moving from Verizon to Zoom. So we were dependent on the timeline and the timeframes that that Verizon would provide us when they were able to put the numbers over. So that caused a lot of stress. So plan early and reach out to, or have Zoom implementation reach out to Verizon or whoever your carrier is early on, because they do, they're losing those lines, so they're not very eager to give you dates for the porting. So something to keep in mind when you're doing your project. Future plans, we do want to automate some of the other things, onboarding, offboarding for Zoom phones. Our thought process is to make it part of our employee onboarding, and we are currently working on that project. And as part of that project, we also want to make sure that once the phone number is assigned and a license is assigned in Zoom, it is automatically updated in all of our other systems. So our Workday, which is our ERP, First Service, which is our CRM for our client support services, and then Active Directory. And we do have Zoom phone SMS enabled for our users. The only thing is we have it available, but we enable it based on request. We are not enabling it for everybody at the same time. So we do have certain departments that are currently using Zoom SMS. So what made this project a success? And this is the last slide. So essentially, it was a lot of teamwork. So think, anyone who knows me, I'm a big fan of cars. So that's why you see that image there. Definitely a lot of teamwork, a lot of different parts moving together and kind of fitting together at the same time. A lot of coffee and a lot of pizza. That's what made this project a success. We actually did have pizza every single port we did. So the team didn't have to worry about food or anything. They were just focusing on the project. So now we will take any questions you have.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for the insights. I think that was a really informative and really good session to help people kind of see the journey. So that we really appreciate you taking the time and doing that. We do have a couple of questions that came in. So the first one here, can you highlight where you felt you had to have physical phones still in place and where you were able to remove them?
Yeah, I can take that. So, so first, if you take a step back, it started with the leadership. So we planted the seeds and we educate first the stakeholders, that what's great about the soft phone. And then we started our campaign on selling it and educating all our users on the soft phone, the benefits of soft phone, what you will get, what can be done with the soft phones that you won't get with the physical phones. And then the next step was to actually start with that in our background, and with that, using that as a basis, we start letting the champions know that, you know, we will not be providing physical phones. We will be only providing soft phones. And if there is a physical phone need, then you have to give us a business case. And they provided us with a business case. So where we needed the phones was the common areas where multiple users were involved using the same phone. So that's where the physical phone went. Certain areas where certain business cases where either the conference phone was needed, or certain users that were very adamant about having a physical phone because that's what they're used to. So we didn't push back too hard on those, because we actually set the goal that we cannot go above 30%. That was a threshold that we set up, that we cannot go above 30% of the physical phone. So if you were under the threshold, we were fine with not pushing back on this. But that's where we see the most of the demand come through. And yeah, common areas were the big ones, and campus PD was another one.
Yeah, another thing I do want to add is what we did as part of the project. We provided the desk phones as part of the project. But for any lifecycle replacement of those phones, the departments have to actually pay for them out of their budget. So thinking of the future, we said 3 to 5 years lifespan, you have to build this into your budget. So thinking through that, a lot of departments were discouraged because they were like, okay, why would I want to spend on physical phones when everyone can use a soft phone? So that was another way of making sure that departments were thinking long-term and short-term.
Yeah, so to sort of incentivize or disincentivize kind of the behaviors you wanted to see around the rest of the project. Cool. Another one we have here, do you use blue light or emergency phones, and are they integrated with this project in any way?
So I'll take that one. We actually do not have blue light phones. We got rid of them. And we replaced them with the Rave Guardian app that is available to all of our community. We also have the ability for visitors to actually opt into the app where they can use that and get in touch with PD very quickly. So all of our emergency communication going out and coming in comes from Rave, the Rave Alert platform, and the Rave Guardian app.
Okay. Did you look into bring your own carrier, and if there would be cost savings with that approach?
We did. Guys, this is Louis. So we did consider that, but from a cost perspective, I think the deal that we had with Zoom was good enough. And then we just want to go fully cloud, everything under one. We didn't want to deal with yet another part of the process, right? Another vendor in it. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. Moving along, we have another one here. How are you enforcing users to update their location services?
Good question. This is a conversation I have with Hamad all the time, because so when we had the discussion with Zoom, technically the client knows when it's on a new network, and at that time it will automatically trigger a dialog box to say, give me your current location, because this is not a known location. The client keeps track of the different networks. So basically a desktop, a laptop, when you go home, it will see that it's a different SSID, perhaps a different IP address. That's what triggers it. And that's when you put in the address. So when you go back to it, it notices, it doesn't ask you again. That's the idea behind it.
And just to add to that is that well, location service is very tricky, as you all know, and it's risky as well. And the way we were handling it, and Zoom is no perfect in updating and forcing everybody to update either. It has its glitches. However, what we made sure that we include that in our trainings, and keeping that in mind that all the other solutions that are out there, whether it's getting a location from Wi-Fi, maintaining physical manual locations, all of that can go wrong, and there could be issues. If it's a Wi-Fi, someone traveling outside and an AP picks up their signal from the inside of the building, gives you a wrong information, and that for campus PD would take more time to respond to it. So we put the onus on the user and this is for anybody that is mobile, whether you're connected wirelessly or connected on yours on any other device. Cell phone, it's a different thing. Cell phone goes through a cell carrier. Physical phone, we labeled it, and we provide the location through the labels, and that's how the campus PD works. But then to layer it on top of it, the location, and we cannot force the users to really put an updated location, but we put the onus on them. And Zoom is not perfect. It catches the if there is a location change, like Louis mentioned, at times, but at times it does miss it. So it's not perfect, but the onus is really on the user.
I like to add something there, Adam, that to make the clarification. I don't know if the audience is aware that what Hamad mentioned is that running the Zoom app on your cell phone, even if you dial 911 on the Zoom app knows to automatically switch you over to the carrier. So no location services from a Zoom perspective I share there. Then it moves to the typical triangulation on cellular, right? Our desktop phones that are wired will give a building location, and that is done on the background because of where the switch is and blah, blah, blah. What Hamad mentioned also is if you happen to be on a laptop on Wi-Fi on campus, that is tough to do. There's a way to do it, but it's tough to do. Overall, you should have, I don't know if you can put a policy to let the users know if you have an emergency, use a cell phone. Don't use Zoom to do your 911 calling. That should be upfront to let the users know what to do.
Gotcha. So I think you answered one of our next questions there around how are you providing physical location when initiating a 911 call. I think you covered that from a couple different angles in that response, so you got out ahead of it. Thank you very much for that.
Oh, good.
We had as well a couple of sort of comparative questions about your process. So, and I think we can kind of answer both these in one shot. What other cloud systems did you look at, and what were the key reasons for eliminating them and finally settling on Zoom? Along with another question that asked specifically if you considered team phones and what made you choose Zoom Phone over competitors.
Yeah, I can take that. So for us, the adoption was the key, and the adoption was with Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So that's where the most of the adoption was. Zoom made most sense, and that is because we found that that within IT and within admin offices, Teams was heavily used. That was their go-to tool. But for faculty members, Zoom was their go-to tool. So because faculty was using Zoom, that means that admin offices and admin operations, they were also using Zoom. So everybody pretty much had the Zoom app, but Teams app, it was between IT and admin operations, and some faculty members would have the team app. So the adoption for Zoom was much higher. Secondly, Zoom was a complete solution. At the time when we were looking at it, Teams was not. For example, Contact Center, it uses a third party. Also, it didn't have a robust capability around the emergency phones. And those are the two areas of risk and focus that we identified at the onset of the project. So that's why Zoom Phone made the most sense. And then also from a license agreement perspective, the licensing deal was great as well with Zoom. So that was also going in our favor. And we knew that, you know, we're not going away from Teams or Zoom. It will stay with us forever. But at this point, Zoom made the most sense.
Gotcha. Thank you. A few more questions here, and we are a little bit over time. It looks like most of the audience is sticking with us. So Team Stevens, as long as you guys have time, we'll keep taking a few more of these questions, but wave the white flag if we need to stop at some point, and we can find another way to follow up with folks. We had another one here about sort of comparative with other systems and integration challenge. So we're currently a Ring Central customer. Our biggest challenge when migrating was our analog intercom system with the Ring Central digital system. Did you have any challenges with Zoom in this regard? Or is there an analog intercom system that you needed to integrate with?
No, we didn't have a need to integrate with any intercom. Actually, we moved away from the intercoms and all the analog lines with this project. The facility used another system. We also have Rave Guardian and stuff, and they're also a separate system that facility is using, but I'm not sure what that is. But we didn't need to do the intercom.
No, and I will add that I believe Zoom does support or have a way to translate or reuse intercom systems. Of course you will have to use hardware that is compatible with the system, but it can happen. Zoom will make it work, but we didn't have that need.
Gotcha. Thank you. Another one we have here, users have to log into Zoom in order for you to assign them a number. Do you have this automated so you don't have to ask users to sign in and so that you can automatically assign them a number?
We actually, Louis, I'll take that. We actually did have that, but what we decided to do was to integrate all users as part of the onboarding process into our Zoom platform, and not assign them any license. So instead of users having to log in, so initially we had this problem where if user is not logged in, they can't be assigned a number. But as part of the project, that's a change we made into our integration. So any user that's onboarded is now added to Zoom without any license, and you can do that. So it's not counting against your license or budget or cost. They can just stay there, and then you can assign them a license. They do not need to log in.
All right, sounds good. We have a couple. We have a follow up here on the sort of E911 and location tracking side of things. Are you using nomadic location in Zoom Phone? And related to sort of the way Zoom tracks or routes location tracking, are you not concerned about Kari's Law and Ray Baum's Act because they require a dispatchable location? Do you consider only the building as the dispatchable location in that context?
Yeah, so this was agreed upon with the police department and the 911, the county, where the location is like I said, is agreed that depending on what switch the phone is connected to, that's how we can tell what building it is and what floor. For us, it's the floor, because typically you have a network switch per floor. In the places where you don't, then it's really just the building. The police department signed off on it, and when we did the testing with the county, they were also fine with it. So no, and I think one of the other ones, Kari, so I don't know, I forget which one of the two laws. Is it the one that I forget? Then not having to dial 9 or any other number instead of 911, that's covered.
Yeah. Just to add to that, so the Ray Baum law does not really, it's not prescriptive. Well, according to New Jersey tort, it's not prescriptive on exactly where, it just says location. but it doesn't say exact location. It doesn't say that you need to know the room number. So it's not prescriptive. However, it is a requirement that you need to have a dispatchable location. Now, that's where certain things can happen, and this is where we divided that into two phases. One is the physical phone, so that's you're getting it through the labels on the phone itself, and then the mobile where you have it on your laptop, and that's where it gets very tricky. And when with talking to the campus PD, they didn't want to. They said that their statement was that if we go into the wrong location, like let's say the device is connected to an outside AP, but the person is inside, that will take more time than to just know the building location. So we actually ensure that because there is no easy way of getting that location services, we put the onus on the user that they update their certain location services, and that was part of the training. We reiterated that on multiple occasions, just to ensure that the user is responsible for its own location. Otherwise, through wireless, there is no better way or best way to actually provide that.
Got it. Thank you. Another question here. Does Zoom have proxy SIP addresses for use to utilize paging adapters or integrate with paging adapters in any way?
We don't use that. I'm not really familiar with that, so I don't have really any good comment about that.
Okay, and we can maybe, Michelle, maybe we can take that as a note to follow up with Zoom directly and see if they can help to provide a response there. A few more, and again, guys, I know we're keeping you over time, so if we're running too long, please let us know. But we have more questions coming in, certainly a hot topic. So we're wondering if your legacy system had call routing rules for on-campus offices, and were you able to set those up with Zoom?
On-call routing. I mean, I'm not sure I follow that question. I mean, we have every department set. Every department has their own line. We do have a main number that has a nodal receptionist, in where you can search users by name. The queue itself gives you option to go to different departments that we felt needed to go there. So I don't know what other routing you may be referring to, but
Yeah,
yeah.
in terms of that, Louis, we do also have routing set up for external services, right? With our facilities, after a certain time, it goes to, like, for work orders, it goes to third party, and then for
Yeah, but that's part of so creating cold queues where, yes, so that's the difference between a shared line, a cold queue, where you can get very fancy where, and this is before you even get into contact center. Thank you, Miriam. Um, on a cold queue, you can start setting up an IVR where you can set other different options to go to different, if that's what you're referring to. Yes, you have a lot of options there to do that. You have to know the difference between a shared line and a cold queue. While cold queue gives you a lot more different features to do that, where you want the voicemail to do, like Mary mentioned, what to do after hours. Which, by the way, that could get very, very dicey, because we got into, I don't want to say into trouble, right? But there's a global business hours for the entire campus that applies to the users, but some offices may not have that same calendar. They want to keep a separate one, for example. When you'll see it when you run into holidays, right? If you want to keep a different holiday, you have 24/7 departments. You have some that are not. So you have different options to do that. You can really get very, very granular to route your calls like you asked. So sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mary.
And the for instance, that the person who asked the question brought up was, say, for within an office, if a call comes in and rings at one desk first but isn't able to be grabbed there, can it roll over to others?
Oh, absolutely. And that is the difference between a shared line and a cold queue, right? That you can select simultaneous, you can select in order, you can round robin, you can even say, well, if members of a cold queue if you have it by order, do you still need it to ring on a person that is on a call? No, you probably don't, but it's an option to say, no, don't go to the next guy or the next person. So you can do all that as a call queuing. That's part of the license. If you want more call center type of features, that's when you start talking about contact center, analytics, what have you, all of that stuff. Although Zoom Phone by itself is getting very, very granular with logging and historical data that you may not want to go to contact center. So yes, you can do all that.
Zoom has a lot of flexibility to configure this. So if that's what they're trying to ask, if they have multiple use cases, then yes, it has a lot of flexibility to configure all those use cases.
Got it. Thank you. Just a handful more here. We're almost out. You mentioned you eliminated most of your fax machines and lines. What did you mean exactly by lines? Is a DID no longer needed?
No, the DID gets migrated to the eFax service. That's what we did. I hope that answers the question. No DID is lost. So like if a department had a fax line, a fax number attached to a fax machine, that number that the machine had was assigned. Now it was ported over to the eFax service. That then it became the cloud, if you will.
Yeah, for parts line, we took a three-pronged approach. One was prior to the project, we were already looking to migrate everything these are emergency services, alarms and stuff, and that's with facilities to the cellular phones. Then we had panic buttons, and we went with a solution called Verkada, again, cellular and Wi-Fi dependent, had a backup as well. So we moved that out. And then the third phase was in this part, with this project, we actually moved all the fax lines over to eFax.
I would like to add though, right? We were lucky to say move to facilities and your fire department or fire alarms, move them to cellular, get out of our hair, right? We were lucky to do that. However, I know that there are some that are not able to do this, and then you'll have Zoom supports ATAs where you can get as close to the analog side as you can, and then connect an ATA, and then connect it to the network, and then manage that way. That is if you're still managing that. Even if you don't, if you're still facilities, you can do that. However, now you have that dependency on that ATA that's still, a risk on us because it's part of the network. But if you're able to not and say, go to cellular, go to a different, go for it.
Got it. So two more questions we have here. Can 911 calls be monitored live in addition to notifications being sent to specific individuals? And if so, can it be separated by site locations for separate individuals or groups?
Yeah, so you definitely, we only have one, but I believe you can create multiple. You have to look into the Zoom has its own 911 process built in. We don't have access to that. This is done within Zoom. So your security team, the emergency services team that you built that is pre-built within Zoom, you can add different. You can add users. You can add common area phones, call queues. You can do a lot of different things. And then once a call does go through and you barge in, you can monitor it live. So the security team is monitoring live all the time if they take on the call. They may choose not to, but one of the things that you have to take in consideration, right? Like the 911 call is made, it goes to a PZAP. In our case, it goes to Hudson County, and then Hudson County eventually will have to call Stevens anyways, right? Because they know that we have a PD here. So we're saving that hairpin traffic by when the 911 call is made from a wired device. Now PD as Stevens knows and is listening, and they don't have to barge in, but they can listen from the beginning as long as they choose to take on the call.
Got it. And so our last one here, which I got a kick out of reading, is there, do you have any other internet redundancy in place if your edge ISP circuits go down? Parentheses, which of course never happens. And that is our commitment. That never happens. But if that were to be the case, do you guys have other redundancy or other plans in place to fail over to?
All right. So for my, because this is network, right? So I'll share. So we have one of our ISPs is NJ Edge. So from NJ Edge, we get is 2 physical circuits, right? So and we have 2 physical locations where ISPs come in, and then we have a second ISP that is on the secondary location, both active. So essentially we have 3 circuits, right? So all 3 of them will have, and not only that, but they use diverse path coming out of Stevens, meaning like one goes up to North Jersey while the other one goes to Newark, right? So that gives us a physical diverse path to do that. You know, if the entire campus is on fire, then we don't, right? But then like I mentioned before, the ones that were, and if we have a fire on campus, then we have a lot of problems, right? So for PD wanted to maintain connectivity for them to receive calls, and for them, like I said, we gave them a cellular option where an iPad it has its own data service in which Zoom runs, and they can make and take calls.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess if all 3 went down, you'd have much bigger problems on your hands
Yeah.
than the Zoom phones. But yeah, and just to speak to the edge network, that's that sort of dual path redundancy is sort of built into everything that we do for our members. We have POPs in Newark and New York City and Philadelphia and all around the state of New Jersey and otherwise. And so that physical path diversity really helps with that redundancy and really keeps our members from going down in the first place. So that's our commitment to all of you for sure. That's our last question. That was a marathon. I think that was the most questions we've ever gotten at the end of one of our webinar sessions. So thank you to a really active participatory audience today. Thank you to Mariam and Hamad and Luis. This has been a really informative session. Thank you for sticking with us and taking so many of the audience questions and walking them through sort of all the pain points, all the challenges, all the solutions that you came up with in implementing the Zoom Phone project. I think this was a great session. We really appreciate the time you all spent with us and with our audience. So thanks again for being a part of this and for being a part of the Edge member community as always.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.